Well, as a general outline, just to get the concept sort of fully formed mentally, Computercraft is just, uh, well, it's technically two things. First, it's computers. Anything you can do with regular computers, you can technically do with Computercraft with one of these computers here. Of course, at a vastly reduced scale in power, speed, and uh, capabilities to begin with, since the operating system of these computers is very basic. And not basic as in the programming language basic, I mean basic as in text entry basic. It runs in the form of a command line to begin with, but you can build an actual visual operating system if you wanted to, if you could have the determination and willpower to, that is. But also, the second half is taking a look here, the robots here called turtles. They're just like the regular computers, but they also have the ability to interact with the world, which allows you to automate almost anything a player can do. There's also these things called pocket computers. They're just the same thing as these things up here, but with even more reduced capabilities. But you can carry them on hand while using them, and so they're like think of like a sort of a cell phone, uh, but from the 1980s, so more like a PDA actually. Personal Data Assistant, I think, is the acronym's correlation. There's also monitors for displaying things from the computers, printers for printing things onto pages. It works just like a normal printer, how you would imagine it work. A disk drive for using. You can use this for allowing the computer to interface with these disks and use them as like portable hard drives, so you can share things between computers easily. And speakers, which I'm actually not entirely sure how they work, but I'm pretty sure you can guess. You can also use these networking cables or these wireless modems uh, in order to connect the computer to its components or computers with other computers. And there's also this wired form of the wireless modem, which is actually the more basic form. And networking is a complicated thing and should only be thought about after learning the more basic things. Also, noticing there's two types of computers, not counting the sort of debug computer that is only accessible in creative mode or with console commands, I think. The basic computer is just the computer, and the advanced computers have slightly more advanced capabilities, such as being able to display in color and take mouse input, and I think a few other things. They might also run faster. And it's the same case for these two types of turtle. Turtles can also use a few basic types of tools, like these wireless modems, and these things here, which I think are... Actually, I'm not entirely sure exactly what that does. It might be for transmitting information between dimensions, which which regular wireless modems I'm pretty sure can't do. There is the speaker, the pickaxe, which allows it to mine, the axe, which allows it to dig trees. I think this one can dig trees also by default, but actually I'm not entirely sure what the point of having an axe-wielding robot is, or a shovel-wielding, because this thing can dig dirt too anyway, at exactly the same rate as this one, I think. And there's a farming robot which can till land, which is kind of a useful characteristic. And there's the melee turtle that can do combat. And there's also the crafting turtle, which can automatically craft things in its inventory. Oh yeah, the robots also have inventory of their own. So now that all of that basic information is out of the way, actually beginning to use the computer. I see it's already becoming nightfall, it's been so long. Starting with the most basic things, the first thing you're going to want to know how to do is how to look up the documentation for the computer that's already stored on the computer. And the first thing you should do in that regard is type in the help command, which is simple. It's that easy. And so it gives you some basic cursory information. For example, it tells you how to do some more other things, which allow you to learn even more about the computer. And from this point, you could probably learn everything you need to know just by navigating the computer and trying new things, and it probably wouldn't be too hard. But in order to accelerate this quite significantly, we can just jump to a few most important things to know. So programs is a command that is actually quite important to know because it lists all of the currently available programs. Uh, I think it either lists all of the ones that are globally presented or in the part of the memory that you're currently in, the folder, we should say, which in this case is called a directory. That's what folders were called in the olden times. I'm not sure if it actually lists all the programs in the entire computer, or just the ones that are all both globally presented and the ones in the folder you're in right now. I think it's the second option because the first option sounds weird. Why would it search the entire computer for programs? You could almost crash the computer that way thinking about it. Anyway, that's besides the point. Looking here, I can actually tell you what most of these programs are. The adventure program is the game adventure, which is just a text adventure game, which is fun to try. Alias, actually, I don't entirely remember what that does. And this is, this lists all of the, so you see, programs that can have more than one name. They can have nicknames, and those nicknames are basically just shortcuts to the program. So think of shortcuts. And so usually it's some kind of acronym of the name of the program. And that's what an alias is. You can make aliases and you can list the aliases. And I think you can also remove them. APIs, that lists the currently available functions that you can use in the Lua programming language on this machine. So actually, if we take a look at that, it shows us, starting from here on, these are all of the libraries we can use, and each one of them has a list of functions in them that we can use. So in the language, we can specify, first, we can specify which libraries we want to use in the particular program we're writing so that the language knows which of these to preload before starting to use them. Then we can actually specify what in them we want to use, specific functions, or sometimes I think variables even, that are stored in the library, although I'm not entirely sure about that. You can definitely store variables in the form of functions. That's easy to figure out. Uh, and if you're not aware of what a function is, that's just basically a functionality that you can use anywhere you want that is predefined at some previous point. That's redundant, sorry. You can even make your own functions and libraries, and usually it's a good idea to, if you're going to be using a function a lot of times, you want to put that in a library and remember what the name of that library is. Naming convention is also important to make sure you remember what everything does. So for instance, I'm pretty sure the colors library has something to do with screen colors. The disk library has to do with, I'm pretty sure, memory partitioning. The help library, that's pretty simple actually. It has everything to do with I think, the help program. The math library contains advanced mathematical functions like I think sine, cosine, and tangent are in there, as well as probably pi, and rooting, and I mean square rooting and squaring in general, among probably a few other things. The IO function is for, I think in this case it's for either the program interacting with files within the computer, or actually getting input and sending output from and to the user interface. Redstone is for interfacing with redstone near the computer. I'm pretty sure shell has to do with the operating system. I haven't used any of these in a very long time, so I only mostly remember what they do. Window, I think, has to do with just in case you want to build your own operating system, there's some built-in functionality you can use. RS is just an alias for Redstone, as you can see right here, as we saw earlier. Operating system, I'm pretty sure is what this acronym is implying. HTTP is actually for the Redstone computer to be allowed to access the internet and gather files from it, or information in general, or even upload information. I'm pretty sure it can do, but that's much more advanced. There's also a peripheral for handling any of the sort of devices you can clamp onto the computer to get it to work. What else is in here? I think keys is for getting keyboard input. The paint utilities is, I'm pretty sure, a library used in the built-in paint program that's kind of like MS Paint for making images and storing those images as files, although I'm not entirely sure what file type it uses. There's package for, I think, downloading packages from the official Computercraft site. What else? String, that stores many of the functions used for string manipulation, and a string is just a string of characters, or in other words, numbers or letters or special symbols. Everything that's being displayed on this monitor right now is actually strings made of characters. Some of them are even lone characters, like this underscore right here that the cursor is represented by. I'm pretty sure that's a lone character, not a string. There's also vector for vector math, which is also kind of advanced. I think parallel is for parallel processing, which is running multiple different functions at the same time using different CPU cores. There's table for table manipulation, I'm pretty sure. Coroutine is basically, I think it's really similar to how functions work, only coroutines you can pause and resume at will anywhere within the coroutine. And so it's kind of like a program you run alongside your primary program, and that's for multitasking things in the computer. This different spelling of colors is actually just the same thing. I think it's either an alias or it's the same thing with a different name. Because this is the European English pronunciation, and this is the American English pronunciation. What else? I'm pretty sure FS means file system, which is basically just the system that's used for managing every file and folder in the entire computer. We should move on from this, actually. So, the easiest way to look back at the programs available is to just use the function again. We can actually, I think, set up a system for having all the output of this program or function here output into a text file so we can read over it more closely and carefully. What other programs do we have in here? We have CD, which is change directory, which you use that function for, or program. I think a program is basically just a function, isn't it? Only kind of larger and well, that's besides the point. You can use this change directory function for navigating the file system and going to different folders. Clear here you see is for clearing the screen like that, and we can actually use CD right now, using it with no arguments, which is no additional information. Just gives you this error message to tell you exactly how it works. Actually, I can tell you right now that ls is the acronym for list, which lists the current directories under us in the directory we're currently in, or the folder even. Either way, and we can use cd rom to change to the ROM directory, so now we're in the ROM directory, and we can use ls again to see what's in here. And in ROM is actually all of the basic information of the computer that it comes preloaded with, including the operating system. We can also use cd, I think, ... to go up a directory, or we can even use, no, never mind that then. Actually, I don't remember. Yes, look, if we try to go up from this directory right here, there is no directory above this. This is what's called the root directory, which is the core of the entire file system. Everything is below this, which is why it doesn't have a name, because it's implied. It's implied to be the normal state of being, and everything else is a modification from it. And so it doesn't need to have a name. In fact, you could just as easily have the root directory be called the computer itself, because it's synonymous with being the computer. So everything in the root directory is the computer, and everything in the computer is in the root directory. And now what? We should actually keep going through the available programs, shouldn't we? If nothing else, just for fun. Drive, I'm pretty sure, is for maybe separate hard drives. I don't think I remember using that ever. Edit is for opening. That's actually the text edit program that you use. So we can actually use edit, and if we type in something that's not in the current directory, we can actually create something new. We can just call this new file new. And so typing edit and then anything that's not in the directory will create the new file with that name, instead of editing a file that has that name. So now we can run that with the argument, and we can in here type whatever we want. So for instance, we can type there. And so now this is the contents of the file. There is nothing else in this file. And then we can press Control to bring up the options here. And right now there's only two options, to save and exit. So we can press S to save, and then we can press Control again, and then E to exit. And now if we list what's in the root directory, new.lua is there. Because, and of course, the default state of being for the edit program is to create Lua files. Actually, I think you can alter this file here to have a different file extension. So let me think. I think rename. Yeah, that's. And then we can. Wait, no. Remember case sensitive. So you might be typing in the right thing with only one minor difference, and that is the case of any of the letters. So I think this takes two arguments. And I think that worked, so let's list again. Yeah, and it worked. This is a new file type, the .text file type. And now I think if we try to edit this And we can use tab in order to auto-complete things that are mostly already typed in. A very good feature. It still has all of its contents, just the file extension has changed, and this file extension is just a way for the computer to keep track of what type of file it's working with for coordination, so that it doesn't try to read an image file as like a program file or a text file, or vice versa. And so it can actually use that for error detection and correction as well, to make sure that everything is happening as it's supposed to. So going back into programs, let's see, what else do we have here? We have hello, which is just, I think, a hello world program, which is dumb and boring. That's the most basic type of program. In fact, I could show you right now how to make such a program. First of all, I need to rename this to being a Lua file, so that I can run it as code without anything weird happening. There, now. I can actually do this. Watch. There. Now watch. If I try to execute this now by calling its name, it will do exactly as I had instructed. It prints this meme here, and so that's a very simple way of demonstrating exactly how a Hello World program works. What else? Help, we already know what that does. ID, I don't remember what that does. We can see about that later. Label changes the name of the computer. In fact, we can do that right now. So, by doing this, we can set the label of the computer, or the name of the computer, to be anything we want. There. And now we can also get the label. There. And of course, I think that's actually also used in networking to keep track of which computer is which. There's list, which is just the ls program, but not acronymed. There's Lua, which is the actual Lua interpreter. I don't think you want to be altering that at all, because if you do, I think there's a chance you might break everything in the computer. There's mkdir, which is make directory, just an acronym of it. Actually, not even an acronym anymore, it's just some kind of weird amorphous abbreviation. We can actually see what that does now. So basically, you just call this program and then enter anything after it. And then that's now a directory in whichever directory you're currently in. And so now the lol directory is a new directory in the file system. We can go to it. And now we're in the lol directory, and we can actually see here there's nothing in the lol directory. There's also the rm function, which is remove, which removes directories, as well as the delete tool or function that also deletes files but not directories. The reason these two functions are separate is because dangerous things can happen when you have the ultimate tool of destruction. Things like wiping out your entire computer, literally erasing everything. Imagine erasing your root directory by accident. That's never happened to me, but I can imagine what could happen. So I'm actually going to remove this directory because it's an offense to my sensibilities. There. We can also clear the screen to remove all evidence of that directory ever existing. Much better. So now, beyond just that, there's monitor, which is the function used for. Wait, I forget exactly. This isn't in library, so this is a program, which also means that this must be somehow used for interfacing with a monitor, but I'm not entirely sure how or why, or what exactly this is. Pastebin is just for getting programs from some kind of some place like similar to GitHub, but for specifically for I think things like this, like uh, how do I even words escape me at this moment. Just rest assured that it's similar to like a packet manager, but for like a repository where people can just put whatever they want. There's also, oh yeah, so it's like an app store, but completely free and open source, and also much more basic. There, I don't exactly remember what move does, but I'm almost entirely sure that it moves things between files in the file system. Programs is this function here. Reboot reboots the computer. Redstone, you can use that program to directly interface with Redstone without writing your own Redstone program. Renames I think files and folders. Repeat, I don't remember what that does. Set, I don't remember exactly what that does either. Shell, I don't remember exactly what that does. Shutdown is self-explanatory. Time, I'm pretty sure, has everything to do with the internal clock of the computer. Type, I think it has to do with file types. Wget, I don't know. Worm is a game just like Adventure, only it's Worm. I remember that game from, I think, the 1980s or 90s. Pretty sure the 1980s. It might even be the 1970s. I don't know enough about the time period to tell exactly. But now we've hit the end of the currently available programs, and also see the program called new is within this. Actually, I want to see something really quickly. Look at this. You see the new program called, well, I really shouldn't have named it that, should have I? You can see that program uh, doesn't appear to be listed in here, and so my first suspicion was correct. There's only two ways of running a program, either from the directory you're in, or somehow by globally presenting the program somehow. Although I don't know exactly how that works, but it has been done with all of these programs since you can access them from anywhere. Uh, so that's a mystery solved. And now that's all the basics I think covered. Uh, oh yeah, this another acronym for clear. In fact, I think we can make our own alias for that if we wanted to. So first, hmm, I'm not sure if this works. Let me try. Hmm. Oh, never mind. Sorry. Let me just now I don't know how to remove aliases, so I'll need to figure that out immediately. Also, hmm. Oh yeah, I know what to do. I can use the help program with alias, and that might show me something I didn't know. Oh, here we go. Ah, of course. And calling alias and then whatever the alias is, or I think whatever the alias is referring to. I think whatever the alias is, actually, because if it's referring to, you can't delete only one alias of a thing at a time, which would be bad. So let me try this really quickly. There. My suspicion was correct. You call the alias function, then whatever the alias is, and then that removes that alias from the object it's referring to. There. So problem solved. Now at this point, I think the best thing to do is get into the Lua side of everything. Lua is one of the simplest programming languages I can think of, yet also a very high-level programming language. And so it's simultaneously very powerful and very easy to mentally work with, because there's so few parts to keep track of. And because of all this, you can learn it pretty quickly and easily. Actually, I think the best way to demonstrate this is to actually do some of it. So I should probably make kind of a sampler platter here for all of the things you should probably be using the most. I haven't used Lua in a while, and not very much last time I did, so this is probably going to be sort of not perfect. Let me think. Hmm. Firstly, you can just assign variables as simply as this, x equals 1. You can also do x, wait, what else? Oh yeah, you can do x equals 1 minus 2. You can do that. And these are just algebraic equations now that are going to be resolved, and the return of these processes is going to be whatever x should be. But always remember x should, or whatever this name is going to be, should be on the left side, and the equal should be directly next to that, I'm pretty sure. And so that's how you do basic variable assignments. You can also do x equals y, and so you can put whatever is in x also in y, so it's like copying. You can also, if you want to do this, even though it's completely redundant to do this because it's obvious, and it doesn't actually do anything but waste processing power, and nothing new is being done. You can also actually, I think, store Boolean values like true and false, although I'm not sure if the first letter should be capitalized or not. You can also store strings, which those use parentheses like this. So this stores the string 1, not the number 1, so that can be printed as text, and because it is currently text. What else? Oh yeah, and one of the most important things is tables, or basically just strings of values. Hard to describe exactly what a table is. Think of just a set of variables all lumped under the same name that you can refer to by number, because each one of them has a number. And so, I actually forget exactly how to declare a table. Hold on, I'm going to go check and then be right back. In fact, I'm going to check a lot of things about Lua and be back because I'm forgetting a lot right now. So, uh, to declare a table, you actually need the what is called curly, either brackets or braces. I prefer to just call them pointed braces, or because referring to them by a two-word name is just so cumbersome. So, Oh, sorry. Ugh, forgetting all of the keys. And now, this is a table declaration, parenthesis, terminated entries, 4 entries in this case, and they're all numbered here, but they can actually be anything like any value, I'm pretty sure. And in indexing them, you do this. And this will give you the first of these entries. This will give you the third entry. So normally in most programming languages, the indexing starts at 0 and then goes up from there with the next one being 1. And so the second entry is 1 and the third entry is 2 and the first entry is 0 because reasons. But in this case, the first entry is entry number 1, which makes sense for finally. The second entry is entry number 2. What else? Oh yeah, functions. So functions are very critical. You can define a function by just saying function and then any sort of name like that. But then it needs to have this at the end. And also anything you put in here, like you can actually have numbers in variable names just so long as it's not the first character in the name. Or at least I'm pretty sure I remember that being the case. And then from there, it needs to be actually there. So a function declaration works is any values you have in here are going to be whatever names are assigned to the values that the arguments of the function that are passed through. And I think I remember that if you use something like a table in here or a specific sort of combination of characters, it gives you a table instead of assigning specific names, but I can't remember exactly. And the end of a function is marked by end, just the word plainly. And I don't think it's necessary, but using tabs on the inside of a function is useful for for visualizing where the function is and what's in it, and it just looks better, although it's not necessary. And so, what else? I'm probably not doing a great job at this, but this should just be the basics. Another thing to remember is loops. If you want something to be done multiple times, or even if you want to jump back to the beginning of the program and run the whole thing again, you can use either a while loop, a for loop, or I think a do while loop, which is just a while loop but backwards kind of. Use double equals for checking if something is equal and single equals if for assigning an equality. So this statement here will say while x is equal to 1, and it will check if this is the case, and if it is, it will perform whatever is within this loop, which is also terminated with end. You should also put inside loops tabs, just like with functions. The for loop is slightly different. I don't remember exactly how for loops are formatted in Lua anymore. I think it's I completely forgot, but I feel like it's this first thing here is actually that's even kind of complicated to describe. Uh, Probably just confusing to even think about, but just think of a for loop as being uh, a loop that goes through a list iteratively and performs certain actions based on whatever's in that list, or anything similar to that. And I'd also check. It's also an easy way for checking how many times the loop has been performed, because this thing usually tells you exactly how many times, so that way you don't need to actually have a variable in the while loop that increments at the end of each time it performs, like you normally would logically. And so I think that's all I remember for right now, except for I don't even remember how to import things, the functions from the libraries. Let me actually go check again. I actually can't find the documentation I used to have on hand about this, but if you really want to learn more about specifically the Lua programming language, just go, I think, to their official documentation. It's pretty simple. Uh, or you can just watch a video about it, maybe. Not this one, because I can't remember exactly, and I can't find uh, all of my papers on it. Uh, but actually, I set up this other computer to do other things with, but thinking about it, that's kind of redundant, since the functionality of that is actually kind of simple. Uh, very, a very simple incrementation from this. I think that's all you need to know to begin with, though. This is just the very basics.